All right, today we're going to continue talking about real, imaginary, and complex numbers. So in the left-hand column, numbers 1 and 2, we're going to just identify what's the real part and what's the imaginary part. Okay, so it should be fairly simple. So in the number 1, we have z equals negative 19i plus 14. So on the right-hand side of the equation, negative 19i plus 14, what's the real part, what's the imaginary part? So I'm going to just write real and imaginary. So the real part is the part of the equation that doesn't have an I, or the imaginary unit. So the real part here would be the number 14. The imaginary part would be negative 19. We don't need to put the I with it. It's already understood to be imaginary. So the real part's 14, imaginary part's negative 19. Number 2, same thing. We have real, we have imaginary. So the real part is 32. The imaginary part is 41.9. Okay, and that's really all there is to this particular section. We're just identifying real and imaginary. Now on the other side, in the right-hand side, numbers 1, 2, and 3, we're going to identify the numbers as real, imaginary, or complex. So let's start with the first one. Negative 3.709. There's no imaginary part to it, so it's definitely not an imaginary number. So since it doesn't have an I know it's real. Okay, but it also could be complex because if I do this plus 0i, it doesn't really change the number, but it gives it a imaginary part. So it could also be complex. Now number 2, similar, but this one has an I now. Okay, so I could also give it a real part, but instead of 0i, just put plus 0. So in this case, 15.301i would be an imaginary number, but it could also be complex. Now, when we talk about complex, that all that means is it has a real part and an imaginary part. Okay, and for it to be a complex number, it has to be able to be written in the form a plus bi. So at the top of the screen, I'll just write that down: a plus bi, or a minus bi. So let's make sure we get all the cases. Okay, so all these problems are going to be real. I'm not real, but all these problems are going to be complex. Then they're going to be either real or they're going to be imaginary, unless they have both parts. Okay, so number 3, I see a real part, I see an imaginary part. So it can't be real because it has an imaginary part. It can't be imaginary because it has a real part. However, it can be complex because it has both parts. So really, those are the 3 types of problems there. We have real and complex, we have imaginary and complex, or it's just complex if it has both parts already.